Yo guys, we are back for some more Ace Attorney JFA reviews, and today we are looking at the second episode of the game, Reunion and Turnabout. The first episode, The Lost Turnabout, was okay, but it was only the tutorial case. Now we're on to the main story. Before I begin talking about the case, I do want to mention something you'll see commonly throughout the rest of these reviews. So for example, in this review, I say that the channeling chamber is the best location in the series so far. When I say it's the best location in the series so far, I mean it's the best location when looking at Ace Attorney 1 and cases 1 and 2 of JFA. I'm not comparing it to every location that exists in the series today. With that being clarified, let's jump into the review. We get a really nice cutscene with the car accident and Maya being arrested for murder again. The setup is neatly done. Turner Gray going to Karain to get a signed confession from Mimi is well explained by the game, so let's move on to the crime. First, I want to talk about the fact that I love that we get a map of her surroundings. This is something that the first game also does well with Turnabout Samurai. It just makes it easier to understand how the different places connect to each other. So we get a look around all the places we will be using, and then we finally go into the channeling chamber. And this is hands down my favorite location in the series yet. It has such a creepy and mystical atmosphere and the music is amazing. Adding to this ambiance is a character I really love, Morgan Fay. From the very start she comes off as very suspicious, and this is definitely intentional. You can tell from her sprites that she's constantly hiding something. Also, her sudden angry sprite is a really good jump scare, and all of these mannerisms just add to the mysterious feeling of the chamber. There are also some good moments of humor to complement the scary side of Morgan Fay, such as when Phoenix is about to refer to Pearl as an odd girl, but then immediately takes it back when he learns Pearl is Morgan's daughter. Then we finally get to the channeling, and it's just really exciting to see what's going to happen. Normally cases start out very slow by having a news report, and then visiting the defendant, and then going to the crime scene to look for clues. But Reunion and Turnabout changes it up and makes it a lot more interesting by actually making the murder take place near us and letting us experience some of the clues right away. What do I mean by this? Well, we already learn things as the channeling is going down. First we see the room get locked from the inside. Then we wait in suspense, and bang, a shot is fired. And then bang, another shot. We take in information related to the crime immediately, and it's amazing to see. We then break the door to see Dr. Gray murdered, and one of the most creepy things I've ever witnessed in my life. Maya looks like she's possessed and has blood on her dress, and it appears as if the ghost that possessed her also decided to confess to the crime. Lotta then takes 2 pictures, and it's after this that Morgan Fay tells us to leave the area, meaning she now has access to the entire crime scene. Morgan Fay's plan does rely on luck. She has to hope that both Phoenix and Lotta will step out of the crime scene and call the police, because if one of them decided to keep an eye on her, her plan would fail. However, I don't think this is bad. Lotta was an unexpected guest that countered her plan, and everyone was in a panic, so it's not that contrived that both Phoenix and Lotta want to call the police. Gumshoe arrives, and we get more interesting information. Apparently the victim was stabbed and then shot. Again, more questions. Why would the killer stab the victim first and then shoot him? How did the killer acquire the weapons? Did they have both weapons on them? When the case has you asking a lot of questions from the very beginning, that's usually a good sign. Oh yeah, there's also Pearl who has the key and she runs away from us, but again, more mystery elements are added. Why does Pearl have the key when it makes more sense for either Morgan or the police to have it? You might be asking why I'm going through every single thing we can learn from the investigation. I'm doing this to show how good this segment is. There's a lot to think about, there's suspenseful moments, many story elements, and there's good comedy. Without a doubt, this is my favorite investigation segment that we've seen from the series so far. It fixes the problem of the first game, where the first and sometimes second investigation just felt like not much was happening. What's also nice is the investigation segment is fairly easy to navigate, so you can get through it without many problems, which is another additional benefit. Now let's talk about Pearl. Her interactions are really funny. She thinks Phoenix and Maya are a couple, and Phoenix is flabbergasted. What I like about Pearl's dialogue is that she doesn't know much about the world. It leads to funny dialogue such as Pearl running to the courthouse, which would take 2 hours by train. She's a very original character for the series, and adds a lot to the group dynamic. Finally, we have the Magatama, a new gameplay mechanic introduced. As a gameplay mechanic, it works very well. Basically, you're just interrogating people, but it's presented in a cool way. However, Reunion and Turnabout does suffer from being the first episode to introduce the mechanic. The reason being, it's really easy to misinterpret what the Magatama is capable of. A lot of people will interpret the Magatama as a lie detector, but that really isn't the case. Remember, Eeny Miny is actually Mimi Miny. A lot of new players might use the Magatama as a deduction device, and come to the conclusion that Eeny Miny indeed has a dead sister named Mimi Miny because no Cyclops come up when she addresses her. Obviously after this case, the confusion will go away, but it doesn't change the fact that it can be a source of confusion to some extent. Well, anyway, we end up interacting with Mia in the detention center, and we're left off with an amazing cliffhanger. The Cyclops popping up at the end builds more suspense, and overall I have to say that this is a perfect example of an excellent investigation. Now it's time to go to the first trial. We meet Manfred von Karma's daughter, Franziska von Karma. She does make a good first impression as she starts assaulting everyone in court. Already she has the same mannerisms as their father, and starts doing similar things to him, such as putting a time limit to reach a certain objective. She objects a lot more like her father, and we can already see how she follows Manfred more than Edgeworth ever did. Edgeworth really wasn't all that ruthless, but Franziska puts up much more of a fight. She objects to pressing many times, and she brings up several possibilities of what could have happened to constantly counter the defense's arguments. The first trial, simply put, is another amazing segment. We get introduced to many new pieces of evidence. We get the gun, knife, Maya's clothes, and Lotta's photos. What makes this mystery fun is the scenario we're presented with. There's a bullet hole 8 inches above the ground, which is really low, and we also got the mystery of stabbing the victim and then shooting him. No time feels wasted, every argument is worth looking over, and the segment itself doesn't feel like a waste because we learn a lot more with the evidence we're given. If there's one part in the gameplay I don't like, it's the spot selection. You have to pick a spot right next to the curtain. If you pick a spot near the box, like around here, you'll get the answer wrong. The argument is that the culprit had to be far away because otherwise there would be gunpowder on the culprit's sleeve. However, there's no indication as to what that range is. The game says point blank range is 12 to 20 inches, but we as the player can't really know what 12 to 20 inches is in terms of this diagram. Also, you'll get it wrong if you say the culprit is behind the folding screen. Apparently that's wrong because the victim can't see the culprit, but he could have seen the culprit go to the folding screen area and then try to shoot her. So why is that a wrong answer then? What's funny is that's how the explanation goes at the end of the case, so I don't know why they narrowed down the culprit's location to just the area right in front of the bullet hole. Now there is this weird part at the end with the final question. The question is, what happened before we forced our way into the channeling chamber? The conclusion you have to make is that Maya left the room because the key was with Pearls later. This is a really bad way to end the trial. We're just making way too many assumptions. We don't take into account if someone took the key from Maya's body. We left Morgan in the channeling chamber with the victim and Maya, so why couldn't Morgan be the one who brought the key to the outside? The key doesn't prove Phoenix's claim at all, and it's baffling that this contradiction made it to the final version of the game. That being said, if we look at the day overall, it's easily my favorite day in the series so far. I'd give the first day a 9.5. All the dialogue is very fun to go through, and the same goes for the mystery solving. The only bad things about the case so far is the ending and one of the spot selections. Everything else was phenomenal. It's just unfortunate that the second day can't live up to the quality of the first. I will say it starts out fantastic. Morgan Faye is creepily staring into a mirror and mentions Misty Faye. Suddenly she realizes Phoenix is listening in, and we get another very suspenseful moment. I think you guys understand why I like Morgan Faye so much. There's a lot of great moments with her, and we slowly learn more about the Faye clan every time we talk to her. I've heard a lot of people say the Magatama only activates when someone consciously hides a secret. If they unconsciously hide it, the Magatama doesn't work. I don't agree with this because there are many moments when the Magatama doesn't activate from a conscious secret, and Morgan Faye is the most obvious example of this. She clearly hid something from us, and no Cyclops were found. It's for this reason why I think the Cyclops should be treated as a gameplay element rather than a story element. At its base, it's just Phoenix interrogating people, and the Cyclops coming out with the cool music is just there for the presentation. Now sadly, the investigation feels very long and dragged out. I had a difficult time figuring out what to do half the time. Day 1 felt very intuitive, but day 2 just felt like a maze where you just try to do random things and hope they work. Not to mention, we got introduced to Dr. Hottie and oh boy, Yeah, it's a nightmare talking to him. So the guy told me he'll talk more if I show him something attractive. And if you guys know Dr. Hottie, you know what he wants. Well, at least I thought so. So I decided to show him the profile of every woman involved, and I got no additional statements in the talk menu. I even showed him the picture of the woman in the bloody clothes, and I got nothing. So here I was convinced that I had to go find some other photo of some woman to get him to talk. But no. The attractive thing he wanted to see was Phoenix's badge. Now Phoenix's badge looks really good, but how does anyone come to the conclusion that Dr. Hottie would care? But well, whatever. Overall, I don't have much to say about this segment as a whole. Different people will get stuck on different parts of any given investigation, so experiences will vary from player to player. Other than that, we get to the incident of Pearls breaking the vase, which is funny, and we get to see that Mia was covering for Morgan Faye, which is kind of weird considering your sister is on trial, but okay. So we get to the final trial, and again, it's just not nearly good as the first. We went through so much detail in the first trial, but we barely did anything in the second. We bring up how Pearl was fixing the urn in the winding way to counter Enie's point about going from the side room to the channeling chamber without seeing anyone, but we have no way to prove this. All Franziska has to ask is if we have evidence that Pearl was fixing the urn in the winding way at that time, and the entire argument is broken. Because think about it, how can we prove Pearl was fixing the urn at that time? Sure, we have the urn and ball as evidence, but those by themselves don't prove when and where Pearl was. The urn itself just proves that it was broken at some point in time, and then fixed at another point of time. Phoenix got this information from Pearl himself, so why doesn't Franziska call out Phoenix and just say he could be making this stuff up? For some reason, Enie just lets this go as well, and it doesn't make sense at all. At the very least, they should have Pearl testify to judge whether or not Enie or Pearl is the person that's telling the truth. Enie retracts her statement by saying she was only in the side room, but Phoenix says that can't be possible because Enie slipped up and said Morgan Faye was the only one at the channeling chamber. Phoenix argues the only way Enie could have known this is if she was at the channeling chamber herself. But what if Morgan Faye just told her this information after the crime? Then what? The whole argument falls flat, but Franziska and Enie don't make a rebuttal because the plot needs to go on. After that, Phoenix goes through the entire crime and says what he thinks happened. Instead of countering Phoenix's points about what happened, Franziska says the gaping hole in his argument is the motive. The motive does seem to be a staple for the series now, but I feel like the way it's brought up is kind of BS. We bring up the fact that Dr. Gray killed Enie's sister, which is a strong motive. Enie argues that the motive isn't strong enough because she wouldn't have waited 6 months to kill Dr. Gray, and Dr. Gray only asked her about spirit channeling coincidentally. But why isn't it just possible that she felt like murdering Gray after 6 months and saw the channeling as an opportunity? You know, this is kind of crazy. It seems like we need another motive just because Enie said her motive wasn't good enough, even though it's a perfectly reasonable motive. Obviously, this is so we have a way to get to the big twist, but the way they do it feels really forced. Another part of the second half that I thought was bad was the fact that no one talked about why Maya's fingerprints being on the knife and gun matters. That sounds weird, but Franziska's whole argument is that the spirit that Maya channeled was the one who killed Turner Gray. So shouldn't the fingerprints of the spirit be on the gun and knife? Why would only Maya's fingerprints be there if this is the case? You could also argue that fingerprints don't change during spirit channeling just like hair, but this isn't questioned. Because no one questions it, we don't get a direct answer. On the first day I was thinking about this fact and I thought it would get resolved on day 2, but they never end up talking about it. Day 2 in general just feels very rushed. Arguments are sloppily made, and the case takes many shortcuts in order to finish quickly. The second trial definitely needed to be longer and more fleshed out. In the first trial, we dug deep into many plot points, there were constant back and forths between Phoenix and Von Karma, and in most cases, we made sure we could prove our claims. In day 2, it's the complete opposite. It's the same deal with investigations. The first investigation had me on the edge of my seat. I liked seeing how the crime played out, the characters were fun to talk to, we learned a lot of information very quickly, and it was paced very well. In investigation day 2, it felt like we learned a lot less than day 1, and it felt very hard to navigate, making it feel bloated and boring. Other than that, I do want to talk about Mimi's character because I do think she's interesting. Mimi Miney made 2 life-changing mistakes. First, she killed 14 of her patients by accident, and second, she got her own sister killed in a car accident. By the end, it's made clear that the car accident was just that, an accident. There were no sleeping pills involved, and that's why Turner Gray wanted to get a signed confession. Everyone makes mistakes, but the 2 mistakes Mimi made killed 15 people in total, and that's just too much guilt to bear. So how did she escape it all? Well, she changed her identity to her sister. That's just dark. It's basically similar to Yanni Yogi, where she's pretending to be someone else this entire time. Her interest in the occult and spirit channeling were also probably some form of escape. She probably wanted to find ways to contact her sister again, or something like that. However, in the end, it only brought her life more misery. It also ties in nicely with what we learned at the beginning. If Turner Gray was looking to spirit channeling, then it makes sense that Mimi told him to go to Korean Village and meet Maya Fey, so she had a chance to stop him in the first place. I think the urn being broken also ties in with the theme of escape and confinement, but I'm not really good with thematic analysis stuff, so I won't even attempt to explain that. Oh yeah, and we can't forget about Morgan Fey. Morgan Fey was an accomplice to the plan, because she was trying to get Maya arrested and make Pearls the master. How did Morgan Fey and Mimi communicate this plan to each other? I'm not really sure. I mean, one of them had to admit to the other that they essentially want to get rid of someone, so how they became partners in crime is beyond me. It's just one of those unknown elements to the case. With that, we get one more scene. The date is unknown. The time is unknown. And we're at a cell? We get one last suspenseful scene with Morgan Fey, and it's an amazing way to end the episode. Reunion and Turnabout is polarizing. The first day trumps any other day from the first game. The second day is unfortunately kinda weak. I think it really got hurt from JFA's rushed development cycle, but I do appreciate that it tried to go for a more complex mystery. If we exclude Rise from the Ashes, which was added later, Reunion and Turnabout is the most complex case in the series so far. It may be easy to figure out the gist of what happens, but trying to fit every single detail of the case and putting them in chronological order does actually prove to be quite the challenge. But the complexity of Reunion and Turnabout is also what makes it suffer. A lot of details did not get enough time to be discussed, and it felt like the end crammed a lot of information and rushed the case. Overall, I give Reunion and Turnabout an 8 out of 10. I still think it's a great case overall. It's a major step up from the Lost Turnabout, so we'll see how the rest of the game fares. Next time, we will take a look at one of the most infamous cases in the series. We're going to the Berry Big Circus to look at Turnabout Big Top. See you all then.